Welcome back, David. Let's dig into the summer's most entertaining thing, alcohol. I want to pick up your brain on alcohol recovery, what it really does to us. Some people say, hey, I can't go to sleep unless I drink a couple drinks or so on and so forth. So, can you open up and explain, well, not so much what alcohol is, but what it does to humans in nervous system, physiologically, and so on and so forth, so people understand a bit deeper on uh, what's crucial to know, because we know
Okay.
education is power, and
Yeah.
putting it to practice is probably something that's going to change your life.
Yeah. So let's kind of start kind of where just about everybody that would drink alcohol kind of knows what's going on. Alcohol gets metabolized at the liver, right? And that's kind of about where everybody kind of stops, right? So let's go a little bit deeper into that little section, right? When it's getting metabolized into the liver, it's getting metabolized by something called alcohol dehydrogenase or ADH and aldehyde dehydrogenase or ALDH. Um, and when it gets metabolized, the production is acetaldehyde, which is a toxin, and it produces reactive oxygen species, and NADH. Now that's a positive. NADH is what's going to go to cytochrome 1 and donate an electron to create energy. So, um, that's what gave alcohol its first uh, position in being banned in the Olympics. That was actually because you can exploit that. Hey, if you know that one of the products is direct mitochondrial substrate, you can literally, if you're running low on fuel, I think the first time it was used as a performance enhancing drug was in a marathon race towards the end of the race where they gave a guy a few shots of brandy to finish the race because it immediately gets processed into acetaldehyde and NADH. The NADH is going to be instant electron donation to the mitochondria. So there is some positive to the alcohol itself being
And I think
metabolized.
before you carry on, for somebody to understand deeper of what you just were talking about, they can refer to video we have done about mitochondria. I think we've done
Yeah,
two or three, so it goes deeper into explaining all the processes you're just talking about. But yeah, carry
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. But the acetaldehyde, the thing that's a toxin, that actually stops the Krebs cycle. So even though it's going to give you energy through electron donation of NADH, it's going to stop the metabolism of fat. Right. So it stops the oxidation of fat and the Krebs cycle. So beta oxidation and Krebs cycle link together inside of the mitochondria, and that gets stopped because of the toxin. But the NADH is direct think of it like you're drinking sugar immediately going into NADH. So there is no glucose to NADH, it's just direct NADH. So there is instant energy, but at the same time, it stops fat metabolism. And that is going to happen the whole time you're processing the alcohol. So as a rough example, and most people might know this, 1 ounce of alcohol. So this would be like pure spirits, right? So like a shot of vodka or a shot of tequila or whatever. 1 ounce of that, it takes your liver about 1 hour to process. So you're going to stop beta oxidation for that 1 hour, but you're going to get NADH and get instant energy. So that is what's happening there. So the NADH obviously isn't necessarily a problem because that's direct energy, but the aldehyde, the acetaldehyde is really the problem with alcohol itself. What it's going to do is it's going to disrupt a couple things. Beta oxidation, like we just said. It's also because of that, it's going to also require your liver to dehydrate you a little bit to process that alcohol. That process of dismantling it is slightly dehydrating. So we have other videos talking about hydration, specifically the one right before this, with flying and being around electromagnetic fields. If you're already in an environment that's dehydrating, the alcohol is going to exaggerate that. When you are being dehydrated, you're not going to create as much melanin. you're not going to create as much alpha MSH for the melanin, and you're not really going to uh, uh, be able to let your body create the right biophotons from the process of the alcohol as normal, regular food, right? That's donating electrons as well. So that's really, in a nutshell, the damaging part of the alcohol is that it's going to disrupt those processes within the mitochondria. Now, there are some instances where that's going to be exaggerated, like I just described. If you're flying, right? So this kind of goes to one of our points that we want to make. There are some times specifically where you are going to want to avoid alcohol. The only real thing that you can do is not drink. And that's going to be in the air while you're flying. That's probably the most exaggerated place where, or environment, I should say, where alcohol consumption is a net negative no matter what you do. That's going to be a
And I
negative.
would also say, I would argue that it's probably one of the most popular place to consume alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, everybody's doing this, but everybody's damaging themselves at the same time. So that would be the number one place in the modern world where you probably do not want to drink alcohol, as we stated in the previous video. But this is the reason why, is because it's going to accelerate the dehydration that's already happening in that environment. Um, if you're indoors all day long or you have a job that's dehydrating you, that's also going to be probably not an appropriate time to come home and de-stress with alcohol. Unless you're going to use some special types of alcohol. We'll get into that here in a few moments. Um, the other thing that it's going to disrupt is it's going to disrupt vitamin D synthesis. It's going to, and that also disrupts protein synthesis, because if you stop fatty acid oxidation and the Krebs cycle while you're processing the alcohol, you also disrupt how the body is processing proteins or folding proteins. So you're going to essentially make it so that protein synthesis also gets halted at that time. And that is also a net negative in terms of if you have fitness goals, right? You're stopping beta oxidation, so fat oxidation, and you're also stopping protein synthesis. So those are temporary. They're not something that happen, for like, well, temporary meaning if you drink alcohol on a weekend, it's not going to affect you on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but it is going to affect you while you're drinking, right? And probably for the next 24 hours.
And there is a like, depending on culture, it's very popular in UK, just having a drink every night, to be honest. So, and I work
Yeah.
with other people who used to drink literally every night just to fall asleep,
Mm-hmm.
and they never get results, no matter what they do.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely stops that. If this is a reoccurring thing, right? Like every 24-hour period you're consuming alcohol, you're going to induce these effects, and they last for quite a while. The other thing that it does is it can make you hypoxic, meaning you're not delivering oxygen to the mitochondria because it disrupts the magnetic field of that ATPase because you're stopping those processes. So you're also going to, so this can get picked up in blood work all the time from people that drink chronically. And when I mean chronically, I'm describing what you just described. That's what I mean by it, that you're having some level of alcohol consumption semi-daily or daily. You can see these in people's blood work. Their red blood cells will go up. Their MCH and MCV will go up. Well, the MCH and MCV have to do with the hemoglobin being placed inside the red blood cells. You'll see those markers go up because the body is reacting to a hypoxic induction. So your body's trying to deliver more oxygen by increasing hemoglobin in red blood cells. So you will see that in blood work from somebody who consumes alcohol regularly. And then you'll also, if they aren't, you know, doing other things, and we'll describe some of those here in a moment as far as mitigating the effects of alcohol, you'll also see dehydration markers go bad. Things like BUN creatinine ratio will go sky high. You'll also see possibly estimated EGFR, which is the filtration rate of your kidneys, go down, um, and that sort of stuff. Um, so I think this is kind of the appropriate time to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you can use if you're now. Another benefit there, before I go there, is you mentioned like de-stressing or having a drink or two at night. That is going to affect the GABA receptors, right? So that is a relaxing effect of alcohol. It just puts you in a more relaxed state. That's not necessarily a negative, right? If you need that to relax, then it also means that you would get way more out of one drink of alcohol if you took it with a little bit of GABA, right? You take a little bit of GABA, you have a drink, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm way more relaxed from this one drink of alcohol that normally would have needed 3 or 4 drinks, right?
Mm.
So strategies are, how do you moderate or amplify the positive effects and minimize the negative effect, right?
At the same time, you probably can take GABA on its own, unless you live in UK where GABA is banned.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah, that's wow. Okay, so there you go. But yeah, GABA, yeah, exactly. You could, yeah, up anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of GABA is not. I wouldn't compare it to like alcohol itself. It's going to have a lesser instant impact, right? Like if you drink a one shot of vodka, for example, you're going to feel that right away. Within 15 minutes, you're going to feel that. GABA is going to take a little bit longer to kick in, but it's going to have the same relaxation effect. So you could amplify the effect, or you could take GABA on its own. Um, and that's going to give you that relaxation effect that most people get from alcohol. Um, then the other things goes into more uh, water mitigation type stuff, the dehydration effect, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. There are some alcohols on this planet that are produced in regions of the planet that are naturally being made with the local water there, and the local water there is lower deuterium content than other places on the planet. Those places are going to be alcohols that come from regions that are high altitude, so high up in the mountains, or high latitude, like any of the northern countries that make their alcohol there locally. They're going to have naturally waters that are more deuterium depleted. Why is that important? Because deuterium lowering the deuterium content of the water that you consume, just like we talked about in the previous video with electromagnetic field mitigation, enhances the ability of the mitochondria to communicate correctly and keep tissues hydrated. So in other words, you're mitigating some of that dehydration effect of the alcohol by consuming water that hydrates cells better.
So it almost explains why if you're getting vodka directly from Russia, you are less likely to suffer from headaches and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, yeah, and that has to do specifically not with the type of alcohol, but where the alcohol, the region it came from, right? So that's a great example. Another great example that you can, most people in America would have access to are Argentinian wines, wines that are high altitude, right? You're talking wines that are produced at around 3,500 feet altitude, all the way up to 4,000 feet altitude. The higher the altitude, the better, because Argentina, that region in Argentina is closer to the equator and high altitude, so they're getting a lot more UV light for the grape to be produced. UV light is a natural way to deplete deuterium, and the water in that region is also glacial water, and so it's going to have a lower deuterium content. So choosing the region of the alcohol is a very important thing if you're somebody who enjoys alcohol but also wants to mitigate the effects, the dehydration effects of the alcohol. Most of the negative effects are going to be coming from that dehydration effect and the inability to process fats. And why is the fat important? Because fat is a naturally deuterium depleted food, right? fats are already deuterium depleted, lower than any other food that you can consume. So if you stop that process, you're stopping the natural process of getting lower deuterium content into the mitochondria. So enhancing that through the water production and the wine in particular is also, it's about 10%, 12% alcohol. So the other 90% is water, right? That's essentially what you read from that. That water is deuterium low, and that's going to help the mitochondrial processes. So it's going to keep tissues more hydrated while you're processing the alcohol itself. Um, Other things that you can do to do that is, obviously, if you don't have the luxury or the ability, or you're just drinking um, alcohol that you're at a party or whatever, you want to stay hydrated, right? And this is actually a known thing, right? A lot of people kind of know that, hey, if you want to kind of mitigate the effects, you make sure you drink water along with the alcohol that you're consuming. But you can enhance that by drinking special water, deuterium depleted water, or sourcing the alcohol from a region on the planet that's already naturally deuterium depleted. Um,
And something you mentioned before as well, you can just make deuterium depleted ice cubes.
Yep, exactly. Right. Yeah, right. So if you don't necessarily want to be drinking a whole bunch of your deuterium depleted water, you can literally make deuterium depleted ice cubes out of the deuterium depleted water that you have. And put it in your alcoholic drink, or make the alcoholic drink, if it's a mixed drink or something like that, with the deuterium depleted water. That's also a way to introduce deuterium depletion into the alcohol that you're consuming. For example, whiskeys and things of that nature. Um,
Can you give
Other
me some
things that
examples? What would be like a really red flag, and you should never take alcohol?
Yeah, if you're so, for example, maybe you don't know that you're naturally being dehydrated from your lifestyle and things of that nature. If you get any blood work where your BU and creatinine ratio is really high, or you're showing signs of hypoxia, like your red blood cells are high but you're not taking drugs, your hemoglobin is high but you're not taking drugs that enhance that or anything like that, those are red flags to me that you are living in a way, or in an environment that is naturally dehydrating you and making you hypoxic. Those would be red flags of like, alcohol should probably be the last thing on your mind, in terms of relaxation or having fun. There are that's when I would say, hey, you better just stick, if you need relaxation or de-stressing after work, some GABA would be the right call, and not alcohol. Those would be the red flags that I would say if you unknowingly are living a lifestyle of dehydration and hypoxia.
So it's almost like an extra incentive to do a blood work before summer starts, to know that, hey, you know what? I can drink some alcohol this summer, or I better sort my stuff out before embark myself into festivals and festivities and whatever, because this can really take a hit on my health way harder than it supposedly should.
Yeah, yeah, and so now we'll get into strategies, kind of having to do specifically with summertime, because I mean, especially if you live in the northern part of the globe, um, you're coming from winter, and your vitamin D might be low, right? Remember what I described earlier. Alcohol is going to disrupt vitamin D production because of all these effects. So if your vitamin D is low, that's another thing of like, you know what? Maybe say because most people like to have barbecues every weekend or whatever, right? And there's going to be some alcohol consumption or whatnot. Well, maybe during the week you better get some extra sunlight, get that vitamin D production going. The days that you're not drinking alcohol. The other thing is sunlight, UV light, like I described, not just for grapes depletes alcohol, or depletes deuterium, sorry, and hydrates tissues better. It does that in the human body as well. So
And
getting
I think
extra,
before you skip over even further, just a little kind of a side quest is that your vitamin D will predominantly produced in midday rather than any other part of the day, because I
yeah,
think that's what a lot of people skip and overlook. And they're like, I'm outside all the time. Well, you're not. You're walking to the car. That's it.
yeah,
That's all you did, all your time spent in outside.
yeah.
So sorry for disrupting you, but I think
Oh, no, no, no
it's
problem,
one
no
thing
problem.
that a lot of people still don't realize, that different part of the day will affect your body differently.
Yeah. And so that's what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are number one, staying hydrated, as best as possible, right? Because in the summertime, you're already, if you are spending time outside, you're going to be sweating more, etc. So you're going to want electrolytes. You're going to want extra water. And if you're interacting with sunlight and being hydrated correctly, you're basically amplifying all the processes that the alcohol is going to disrupt when you do consume alcohol. So the lifestyle that you should live is a lifestyle where you're getting at least 30, 40 minutes of midday sun on as much body as possible, especially the day or two before alcohol consumption. Another thing, alcohol processing is processed at the liver. So you can amplify how quickly you process alcohol and things of that nature by consuming alcohol during the day. During the day is much, much better for you if you're going to be consuming alcohol than in the evening because your liver is going to process the alcohol at a slower rate in the evening. So it's one
Are
of
you
those,
gonna make
and
so
people,
many girls happy for day drinking?
well, I mean that is probably one thing that I would say is like, hey, if you're going to drink alcohol, do it during the day. Do it during the day. Do it, mid-afternoon, and then stop drinking early in the evening. I know that's
That's the
not
hard part.
not the culturally acceptable thing at a party, but I mean, at some point you got to stop drinking. So you don't want, or maybe you don't, right? It depends on your lifestyle. But that would be like if you're going to drink alcohol at a party, stop early in the evening, and that's a lot easier to do in the summer because I mean the sun's not even going to go down until 9 p.m., 10 p.m., depending on where you live. So it's one of those things where if you stop alcohol consumption, around 7 p.m. or so, and the party started at noon, right? You can drink quite a bit of alcohol and mitigate a substantial amount of the effect by shifting the habit of where you're going to drink the alcohol in relationship to the time of day.
Is there something that people should be aware of in regards of what type of alcohols they should drink? You mentioned about where it comes from already, like high altitude, high latitude, all this kind of stuff. But maybe gin over vodka or vodka over wine or wine over cider or whatever. Is
Yeah. So again, this goes into the mitigation strategy. The main thing, right? If let's hypothetically say, well, like me, I enjoy alcohol here and there. But I live a lifestyle where I'm not chronically dehydrated and I'm not chronically hypoxic. Then when I choose to drink alcohol, I usually choose alcohols that are around 15% alcohol or less. So things like wine, things like if you're going to have mixed drinks, make sure that you have the minimum amount, right? Because you're still going to feel the effects of the alcohol, even with 15% or less alcohol, but you're going to be able to drink more drinks, because most people associate alcohol with being social and the social event that's going to happen, right? So what I do is exactly that, right? Like if I'm going to drink whiskey, for example, I water it down. I water it down. Most whiskey is about 40% alcohol. So I water it down to closer to that 15 to 20% range and just enjoy it responsibly. And most people have heard that, right? Enjoy alcohol responsibly. How do you do that? You lower the amount of alcohol that you're going to be drinking per drink. And when you do that, the other, if your alcohol is 15% alcohol, the other is water alongside of it. That is the mitigation strategy that I would use in terms of the type of alcohol is going to matter less uh, outside of the regional discrepancies that I described. So if you're drinking hard alcohols or there's only hard alcohols, I would water them down or put them into a mixed drink or something like that. The other thing that I would probably not do is don't mix alcohols with a lot of sugar. Because the mitochondria is going to be overloaded with NADH at that point, because the alcohol is already producing NADH. So it can make you very, how would I say, uh, you're going to be disrupting the NADH to NAD plus ratio even more if you're consuming alcohol with sugars and things of that nature. Another thing is You can also make sure that before you start drinking alcohol at an event or a social event or like that, make sure that you have ate some food, right? And it's already being processed by the body. So at least a couple hours before that. That's also a really great mitigation strategy. For slowing down the absorption of alcohol at the liver. Other things, obviously, if you are consuming any medications, a lot of people don't take this into account, even though it says on medications, don't take this with alcohol. There's a reason for that because it's probably being processed at the liver, and the liver is exclusively going to process the alcohol. So you're basically exaggerating how much work the liver is going to have to do, and it's probably going to disrupt the medication effect itself if you're taking a medication. Another thing in the fitness industry is oral anabolics. Those are exclusively going to be processed by the liver. Drinking alcohol alongside of those, if it's a drink here and there,
Honestly, it's almost sad that you even can need to mention for somebody who takes anabolics that they shouldn't be drinking alcohol, because if they need to be educated on that, they shouldn't be even coming near anabolics.
I agree with that, but you'll be surprised.
I'm not surprised. I've seen it all. I'm like, I'm working nightclubs and I've seen it all. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And then people are surprised why they drop in dead with heart attacks at 35.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so those would be the no go. So that kind of goes into the group of like alcohol consumption should be like zero or very rare if you're taking medications that are processed by the liver. That includes oral anabolics. The other thing would be that
So what you
alcohol
touched
can
up
have.
in there, what I would like you to kind of enhance a bit more deeper into talking about, like, what kind of hormones does alcohol affect? Because if we
Okay,
go,
well, okay, so it's going to affect all sex hormones, all sex hormones. The reason why is because it disrupts vitamin D production. Vitamin D production, a lot of people, it's called a vitamin, so they think it's a vitamin, but it's actually a hormone. That vitamin D is the starting point where all your sex hormones are going to come from. So the moment you disrupt vitamin D production, you're going to disrupt the production of pregnenolone next, DHEA after that, and those two are what's going to turn into progesterone. It disrupts vitamin D, pregnenolone, not progesterone, pregnenolone, then DHEA. The pregnenolone is going to disrupt progesterone for females. The DHEA is going to disrupt testosterone and cortisol production. So, alcohol can also disrupt the stress that you accumulate later. So, in other words, not necessarily right there in the moment while you're consuming the alcohol, but say you're somebody who consumes alcohol every evening, you're going to disrupt the cortisol response the next day. In other words, you're going to be more susceptible to stress later. So in the next 24-hour period.
so it's almost like you're most likely gonna need caffeine to wake up, and then later in the day, your stress hormones will still be through the roof because of delayed response caused by alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a wonderful way to live.
Yes, it is. It is something that does happen. Again, that happens more with like regular alcohol consumption than like going to a party on a weekend or whatever. But most people will notice that the next day, they need they almost feel like they need something to kind of get them going again. And that's usually, they turn to coffee and caffeine and stuff like that. Um, so it is going to disrupt cortisol. It's going to disrupt and the reason why it disrupts the first three immediately is because the first three, vitamin D, pregnant, rely on sunlight. Everybody kind of knows that sunlight produces vitamin D, but there's a enzyme in there, right? Once you sulfate the cholesterol, that enzyme is called hydrolase. That means that if you're dehydrated, you are not going to produce hydrolase as efficiently, and that's not going to allow you to take the cholesterol and turn it into vitamin D, and then vitamin D to pregnenolone and DHEA. Those rely on that hydrolase enzyme, and hydrolase, it's in the name, requires proper hydration proper hydrogen bonding to create that enzyme. And that is the main thing that's going to be disrupted. That's why I say the biggest thing you can do is prevent the dehydration from alcohol through these strategies that I just talked about, because those are going to mitigate the vitamin D and the sex hormones and all of that.
Yeah, it's the big one because I see it a lot, specifically in people who are like drinking a lot, that their cortisol is through the roof all the time, and lo and
Mhm.
behold, testosterone is down at the bottom of the pit, and they just end up going for some kind of hormonal therapy when in reality it's one thing that you just have to change. I like it. It almost feels like an emotional attachment to alcohol, no matter what cost it comes with, because now you can fix almost everything. But let's be honest, you're not fixing anything. You're just hiding the issue.
Yeah, yeah. And so that would be another thing, right? Like if you regularly consume alcohol and you're like, is this affecting me negatively? Well, just look at your sex hormone panel, look at your cortisol panel, right? And see what's happening there, right? Just like you described. If your cortisol is always high and your sex hormones are coming down or are already very low, below the middle of the range, it tells you that, yeah, alcohol has been disrupting that hydrolase enzyme on that process of taking cholesterol and knocking it down into vitamin D, pregnenolone, and DHEA. So it tells you that it has been doing that for quite a while.
Yeah, and another telltale is where they start storing their fat. I see that a lot as well.
Yeah, because you're stopping the ability to process fat.
Yeah, and for guys specifically, most of them start storing fat around hip area.
Mhm.
Like, first of all, it looks weird.
Yeah, yeah. You can tell if somebody's been consuming alcohol regularly for quite a while, or it's something that they do all the time, because fat distribution changes because of the stoppage of fatty acid oxidation, and also cortisol. Cortisol is going to be high, so it's also going to enhance the storage capabilities of fat, right? So you're kind of with alcohol, you're in terms of fat processing, you're doing two things. You're ramping up cortisol production for the next day, and you're lowering the ability to process fat. So you're doing a double whammy there. You're storing more fat and you're stopping the ability to oxidize the fat.
So this brings me to digging out maybe there are some kind of strategies that people can implement to still have this as part of their life, because most of the people I work with will have these meetings, business gatherings and whatnot, where they will have alcohol present. And it kind of is icebreaker to begin with. It does add a little bit of fun to the event as well, and so on and so forth. Would you say there is like a minimum times that you would say you will definitely not disrupt your progress in health and performance wise if you, let's say, do it every second week or third week or so on? If you are strategic, because you can always say, no, I'm not going to drink.
Yeah.
Or you can always say, hey, this event is really, really like I know I work with some people who like to get their partners as drunk as possible to figure out what are they like. When would
Yeah.
that be the right time? Would that be like every third week, or every fourth week, every third month? When could they?
I would say what like the act of like gathering together and purposely drinking and just kind of socializing and all of that, you could probably get away with it in the summertime if you have these other lifestyle habits in place. You could probably get away with it. So basically, it comes down to your lifestyle, right? If your lifestyle is on point and you're well hydrated, everything is going really well in terms of biological processes that govern sex hormones and cortisol and hydration markers. If all of those are good, I would say you could get away with it once a week, right? Like on a weekend.
Okay,
Uh,
and now give me an example for this, like a vetting process where they like, let's get smashed to the bits. Well, how
yeah,
often would you say that? Because that might involve drinking for 12 hours straight.
yeah. I would say something like that, maybe once a month,
Right, right.
right?
There is a way. You don't need to kind of completely put your strategies away. You can still have the, but just be more strategic about how often you do that.
Yeah. If the plan is, hey, I'm going to actually get drunk, I'm going to be drinking for, 10, 12 hours or whatever, then it's going to be placed once a month, and you're going to want to have some of these strategies in place, like maybe a little bit of deuterium depleted water, or sourcing your alcohol from a region that already has that, and then starting that event or that socializing event early in the day, and then making sure that you're prepared, right, for the next day to hyperhydrate or relax outside and help your body. Because the other thing, right, if let's hypothetically say it's an evening event, right, you're not going to start drinking during the day. You're going to start drinking at 8 p.m. and you're going to drink until 2 a.m. or whatever, right? Then the next day should be a day where you focus on hydration. You focus on getting sunlight on your torso so that you can help your liver continue to process that alcohol and all of the reactive oxygen species and aldehyde that you've produced from the alcohol, because all of that's happening at the liver, and the liver is heavily influenced by daylight, by infrared light. So that would be a strategy that I would implement. The next day should be a recovery day, and it should involve a lot of hydration. It should involve a lot of sunlight on the torso, at least for the first half of the day.
And oh, this brings me back to like there was a time when I used to drink, and most of the drinking was always outside
Mm-hmm.
with no shoes on, usually next to the lake or river. And
Uh-huh.
next day was spent just barbecuing meat and eating meat and chilling in the sun in the river.
Yeah. So,
So
I mean, that's like a perfect strategy if you are going to get wasted, because you're already doing a lot of the things that are going to enhance the processing of the alcohol and enhance the hydration after.
yeah, yeah, that sounds like a great weekend, to be honest.
It does. But
Not
yeah,
looking forward to
that is definitely what the strategy that you want to implement if you're planning on actively getting drunk with people and enjoying your time. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to be a little bit more strategic. Once a month is the most that I would engage in that type of behavior.
Yeah, I'll try to sum it up. So basically, we know summer is coming up, and a lot of people habitually drink all the time, which probably is not a good thing if you are serious about being healthy for as long as possible, and not just being healthy, being at the point where your quality of life seems very high instead of just
Mhm.
surviving and trying to take coffee and whatever the hell there is just to go through your days. And you can definitely implement alcohol in your daily routine. It doesn't need to be like, I'm never going to drink again. Just be more strategic about where that alcohol comes from, how much of it do you drink, when do you drink. And I would say, probably you can agree with this, make some notes and
Yeah,
figure out what works for you, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
how
And
much
and
of,
and don't skip on, especially if you're somebody who uses alcohol as a de-stressor at night. The implementing GABA alongside alcohol will dramatically reduce the need for the amount of alcohol.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I think these are great strategies. A lot of good tips, specifically like what things to look for. Like we usually suggest, do a blood test in the spring and in the winter, and check for those blood markers that might be slightly off. When the summer is coming, make sure you take care of them before
Mhm.
you embark on all these kind of things. And as always, it's not about like building fear. You should never do this. It's about building awareness, what can be done, what people already do, and how to do it more efficiently in a ways that you still get what you're usually trying to get out of it, which is some social life, some pleasure, and all those kind of things. And you can still make sure that following that, you're improving your health and everyone's favorite word now, longevity, right?
Yeah, correct.
Awesome. Sounds great. Appreciate your time as usual, David. I know I need to let you go, and I'll see you next video.
Awesome. Thank you very much.